Scott Bennett, a former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer, is now with us from San Francisco. Scott, thanks for being with us. Let's just first discuss Finland and Sweden's bid to join NATO. And correct me if I'm wrong, but NATO was created in the first place to prevent another world war. And now it seems that U.S.-led NATO is creating another world war by all these provocative moves that it makes day in, day out, despite all the warnings that are issued by Russia. Now they are approving, they are hailing two other countries that are potentially going to join NATO. What's your take?
Well, NATO should have been disbanded and dissolved in 1990 when the Soviet Union dissolved, and essentially there became no threat to Western society, and instead NATO transformed into this parasitic assault weapon that has terrorized the world, engaged in color revolutions from Afghanistan to Libya to Iraq and elsewhere. And now we have Ukraine, of course. Before that, there was Bosnia and Herzegovina. So NATO is just a cannibalization monster that is rife with corruption, and it is, employing bureaucratic generals that couldn't get a job if their lives depended on it. So they're really just beta males occupying, a certain degree of employment. But it's tragic because you're witnessing the world lose all of its sanity, especially with Sweden and Finland having the foolishness to trade their neutrality at the behest of the United States pressure, trade their neutrality and safety, and put themselves in a far worse position where now, before they had no animosity or enmity against Russia, and now they potentially risk complete annihilation because Russia is not playing around. It recognizes the NATO threat, and it's responding to that NATO threat. And every nation that tries to intimidate or be part of the aggression against Russia is facing a foe that essentially could annihilate them with superior weaponry and has a moral fortitude greater than all of the European nations combined. Russia is in a very unique position because it has 30 years of betrayal and deceit and lies that have been inflicted against it by the United States, by the United Kingdom, by Germany, by the European Union, by NATO. They've also witnessed the destruction of the Middle East and several of Russia's allies. So I think Russia has recognized that the West and NATO cannot be trusted as an existential threat, and they're making a move to protect their people, their culture, and their homeland.
And Scott, at the same time, the United States is pumping more and more military aid to Ukraine. Now, recently, the Congress in the U.S. has approved a $40 billion aid package for that country. Where do you think the U.S. is going with this?
Well, it's going to be a money laundering operation. You're going to see billions of dollars spent, and it's going to be recalibrated into Democrat election coffers. Every piece of artillery equipment, military equipment that goes into Ukraine is going to be destroyed by Russia if it even reaches a battlefield. The Ukrainian soldiers have been essentially wiped out, and they don't possess the IQ or the training to be able to handle the advanced weaponry that the U.S. Is sending over there. And it's really weaponry that is totally unsuited for the combat situation. I think another reason for the panic that the West is in is because my old boss, Admiral Eric Olson, who I worked under at U.S. Special Operations Command, has now been captured in Mariupol. And the Russians are getting all of the intel from Admiral Olson about the nonprofit Spirit of America and all of the neocons and the Zionists and the Project for a New American Century individuals that have been part of everything from propaganda operations in Ukraine to the bioweapon chemical labs in Ukraine. This organization, Spirit of America, and Eric Olson, the Admiral of Special Operations Command, again, who I used to work for, this is a major capture by Russia. They've captured Olson, they've captured Cloutier, they've captured British and French soldiers. So the West is in a desperate attempt trying to inflate and intimidate Russia. They're trying to have war tribunals against captured Russian soldiers. All of that is mockery. All of that is propaganda. But it shows you Russia has now gathered the evidence and has captured NATO Western officers from America, and they are presenting all of this material to the world, to the United Nations, to the European people, and they're saying essentially this war that the West fomented since 2007, these biochemical labs that the West planted and cultivated pathogens and diseases and weapons from, this was really the source of not only COVID-19, but all of the instability in Europe. So I think Russia is pressing a moral case, and the West is panicking because it realizes at the end of the day, you're going to see every European sane person come to the side of Russia, abandon the oil and the gas prohibitions against Russia, and you're probably going to see a lot of Western governments be toppled under the weight of their own stupidity and bad choices. So Russia is just waiting out the storm, and I think the West is growing weaker and weaker day by day.
Scott, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. That was Scott Bennett, a former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer from San Francisco.